The world of Rosar had always been a peaceful place. Towering mountains, lush forests, and vast oceans made it a paradise for the beings that lived there. It was a land untouched by war, a place where life was simple, and the people were content. That is, until the day the creature arrived. No one had seen anything like it before. It appeared without warning, landing in a fiery blaze just outside the capital city, causing massive tremors that shook the ground. The people of Rosar had been going about their day, unaware of the danger approaching them from the sky. But when the creature landed, everything changed. It was huge, towering over the tallest buildings in the city. The creature's dark, scaled body gleamed in the sunlight. It had sharp, glowing eyes that looked out over the landscape, sending chills down the spine of anyone who dared to look. Its massive claws dug into the earth as it moved, leaving deep marks in the ground. The creature's tail swished back and forth, cutting through trees with ease. It was unlike anything the people of Rosar had ever seen. The city's emergency alarms blared, and panic began to spread. At first, they didn't know what to think. Was it a monster? A new enemy come to conquer their peaceful world? Some thought it was a natural disaster, perhaps a giant creature born from the depths of the planet's oceans. Others feared it was a machine, a weapon sent by an unknown force to destroy everything in its path. The leaders of Rosar were quick to respond, sending out their military forces to contain the creature before it could cause any more damage. The soldiers lined up, weapons ready, prepared for what they thought would be a fight for survival. But the creature didn't attack. It just stood there, watching. Its glowing eyes seemed to follow the movements of the soldiers, its head tilting slightly as if curious. The Rosarians hesitated, unsure of what to do next. Commander Velen, the leader of the Rosarian military, had never seen anything like it. His fingers tightened around the hilt of his weapon as he ordered his men to move in. "Get closer. It could be dangerous," he said, though his voice faltered slightly. He had seen battles, fought wars, but this was something entirely different. The soldiers moved cautiously, keeping their distance as they tried to assess the creature's next move. But the creature didn't charge or attack. Instead, it let out a low growl, a sound that reverberated through the ground and made the soldiers' hearts race. Still, it made no move to attack. Some soldiers began to question if they were dealing with an actual monster or something else entirely. Perhaps, they thought, it was simply lost, confused, and unable to communicate. In the heart of the city, a small group of scientists had been monitoring the situation. They had a different perspective, one that focused on the creature's behavior. They noticed that, unlike most creatures of Rosar, this one didn't seem interested in destruction. It didn't attack the buildings or harm the citizens. It just stood there like it was waiting for something or someone. Dr. Rila, a scientist who specialized in alien species, was the first to speak out. "I don't think it's here to destroy us," she said, her voice calm but full of concern. "It's not acting like a monster. It's watching us. It's waiting." Her words didn't calm the situation much, but they gave the military a reason to pause. As the hours passed, the creature seemed to grow more restless. It would pace back and forth, its claws scraping the earth as if it were searching for something. Commander Velen, growing frustrated, ordered his men to approach closer. The creature didn't respond, but its eyes seemed to lock onto one soldier in particular, a young man named Jarek, who had volunteered for the dangerous task of getting close to the creature. Jarek moved slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. He had heard the stories of the monsters that attacked planets in the past, but nothing had prepared him for this. He reached out his hand, hoping to make contact, but just as his fingers stretched toward the creature, something strange happened. The creature's tail whipped around and struck the ground, sending up a cloud of dust and debris. It was a warning, a sign that it wasn't willing to let anyone get too close. Jarek froze, his hand still outstretched. But before he could retreat, a voice crackled through the air. "Hold your position," came the order from Commander Velen. We'll need to wait for more reinforcements. This is not something we can handle alone." The soldiers stood in a tense silence, unsure of what to do next. The creature's presence was overwhelming, and the fear in the air was thick. As the sun began to set, the creature remained still, its glowing eyes locked on the city. The people of Rosar had no idea what to make of it. Was this a sign of something worse to come, or was it simply lost and alone, waiting for something to find it? The next morning, the air around Rosar's capital city was thick with uncertainty. The creature still stood where it had landed, unmoving but ever watchful. Military patrols surrounded it, keeping a safe distance. The people had been evacuated from the area, but their curiosity was strong, and rumors began to spread like wildfire. Some believed the creature was a harbinger of doom, while others thought it might be a sign of a new age. The soldiers kept their weapons ready, but deep down, no one really knew what to expect. In the midst of all the chaos, a small group of scientists and researchers, led by Dr. Rila, decided to take matters into their own hands. They couldn't just sit back and wait for the creature to make the first move. They needed to understand it, figure out what it was, where it had come from, and why it was so different from anything the people of Rosar had ever encountered. "I don't think we'll get any answers by standing around," Dr. Rila said as she gathered her team in the observation room. The room overlooked the field where the creature stood, its massive form just barely visible through the smoke from the previous day's chaos. "We need to get closer. We need to learn everything we can about it, and fast." Her team was nervous, but they agreed. They had no choice. The military had no real plan of action, and sitting around waiting for orders wasn't going to help. They needed to know what they were dealing with before things escalated even further. Dr. Rila and her team set out on foot, armed with their equipment and determined to make contact. As they neared the creature, the ground trembled beneath their feet, and they could feel its gaze on them. The creature didn't move. It simply watched, as if it were studying them in return. As they got closer, one of the younger researchers, Mara, couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. "It's beautiful," she whispered, staring at the creature's scales that shimmered in the light. "I've never seen anything like it." "I wouldn't call it beautiful just yet," Dr. Rila said, her voice low and cautious. "We don't know what it's capable of. Let's stay focused." The team continued their approach, staying in formation. And as they got closer, they began to notice something strange. The creature wasn't acting aggressively. It wasn't snarling or trying to attack. Instead, it was standing still, its head tilting slightly from side to side. It seemed curious, almost as if it were waiting for something. "That's strange," said Aaron, a biologist on the team. "It's not behaving like a wild animal. Most creatures like this would have attacked by now." Dr. Rila nodded thoughtfully. "Exactly. It's almost as if it knows we're not a threat." The team took another step forward. Suddenly, the creature's eyes glowed brighter for a moment, and a low, rumbling sound filled the air. The team froze, hearts racing. Was this a warning? Was it going to strike? But the creature didn't move. It simply let out another growl, one that seemed almost like a sigh. Then, unexpectedly, it took a step back, as if making space for them. The scientists exchanged uncertain glances. "I think it wants us to come closer," Dr. Rila said, her voice tinged with disbelief. Before they could decide on their next move, a voice crackled through their comms, and they all tensed. "Dr. Rila, what are you doing?" Commander Velen's voice was sharp and worried. "Stay back. This thing is dangerous. It could kill you all in an instant." But Dr. Rila didn't answer immediately. She was too focused on the creature's behavior. "It's not attacking," she said softly, more to herself than to the commander. "It's waiting for something, or someone." Then, in a sudden moment of clarity, the team realized something that had eluded them before. The creature's movements, the way it interacted with its surroundings, the way it had avoided attacking. It all pointed to one conclusion. This creature wasn't acting like a mindless monster. It was intelligent, far more intelligent than they had first assumed. What if it's not an alien invader at all? Mara said, her voice a mix of shock and realization. What if it's someone's pet? The words hung in the air like a heavy weight. A pet? How could that be possible? A pet that big, that strong, that powerful? I don't know, Dr. Rilla replied, her mind racing. But it's the only explanation that makes sense. The creature isn't acting like a wild animal. It's not attacking for survival. It's acting more like a guardian, a protector. The team looked at each other in disbelief. If this creature was a pet, then it wasn't a threat. But there were still so many questions. Who could possibly have such a creature as a pet? And why would it end up here, on Rosar? The more they thought about it, the more they realized that they needed to find out who owned the creature, who had trained it, and most importantly, why it had come to Rosar. But there was one more mystery that loomed large in the back of their minds. Why had the creature waited so long to act? What was it waiting for? As the team began to set up their equipment, preparing for the next phase of their investigation, they had no idea that the answers they sought were closer than they could have ever imagined. As the days passed, the mystery of the creature grew even deeper. The team of scientists, led by Dr. Rilla, continued their investigation, trying to uncover the truth about the creature's origins. They had now ruled out the possibility that it was simply a wild animal. Its behavior, its intelligence, and its seeming connection to the planet all suggested something far more complex. But there was still one big question left. Where had it come from? The creature's strange behavior, especially the way it refused to attack, and instead seemed to be waiting for something, left Dr. Rilla with an unsettling feeling. She couldn't shake the thought that the creature was not here by accident. It was searching for something or someone. Dr. Rilla and her team decided that they needed to expand their search. If the creature was waiting for a person, then perhaps they could find some clue as to who that person might be. They began looking through old records and scouting nearby areas where the creature could have originated. The search was exhausting and frustrating, but they knew they couldn't give up. Then one morning, after days of fruitless searching, they received a strange signal. It came from a remote area of the planet, deep in the wilderness. The signal was weak, but there was no mistaking it. It was a distress signal, and it was coming from a wrecked ship. Dr. Rilla's heart raced as she read the coordinates. The wreckage was located in a place that was nearly impossible to reach, an area known for its dangerous terrain, filled with thick forests and steep mountains. Still, there was no time to waste. "We have to go there," Dr. Rilla said, her voice determined. "The creature's origins are there. I can feel it." A small team of soldiers, led by Commander Velen, accompanied Dr. Rilla and her team on the dangerous journey. The wilderness was harsh, and the terrain made it difficult to move quickly. But they pushed forward, knowing that they were on the brink of discovering something important. After several days of trekking through the dense forest and navigating the rocky cliffs, they finally arrived at the wreckage site. It was worse than they had imagined. The wreckage was old, charred, and scattered across a wide area. It looked like the ship had crashed a long time ago, its twisted metal and broken parts scattered across the forest floor. But what caught Dr. Rilla's attention was a small, human-shaped figure lying unconscious amidst the wreckage. "Over here," Dr. Rilla shouted, rushing forward. The team quickly surrounded the figure. It was a human, young, probably no older than 30, and badly injured. His clothes were torn, and his face was pale, but he was alive. His breathing was shallow, and he seemed to be in a deep state of unconsciousness. Dr. Rilla knelt beside him, checking his vitals. "He's alive, but just barely," she said. "We need to get him back to the city, quickly." As the team worked to carefully lift the man and carry him back to safety, they couldn't help but wonder, could this be the person the creature had been waiting for? The journey back was slow and difficult, but they eventually made it to the medical center. The human was immediately taken into intensive care. Dr. Rilla and her team stayed by his side, monitoring his condition as best they could. It wasn't long before the man began to stir. His eyes flickered open, and he groaned softly, disoriented. "Easy now," Dr. Rilla said gently, helping him sit up. "You've been through a lot. You're safe now." The man blinked, trying to focus. He looked around, confused. "Where am I?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "You're on Rosar," Dr. Rilla replied. "You were found after your ship crashed. Do you remember what happened?" The man's eyes widened, and he stared at her, his face showing a mix of fear and recognition. "Rosar," he repeated. "But how did I get here?" Before Dr. Rilla could respond, the door to the medical room opened. Standing in the doorway, eyes wide and glowing with recognition, was the creature. The room fell silent as everyone turned to look at it. The creature stood there, watching the man with an intensity that could be felt in the air. It had come. After all this time, it had found him. The man's eyes locked onto the creature, and a strange expression passed over his face. It wasn't fear, but relief. Slowly, he stood up, though he seemed unsteady on his feet. "Seth," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I knew you'd come." The creature let out a low, rumbling sound, almost like a purr. It stepped forward, its massive body moving gracefully despite its size, and lowered its head, bringing its glowing eyes closer to the man. For a long moment, the two of them stood there, locked in an unspoken bond. It was clear that the creature and the man shared a deep connection. The room was filled with stunned silence as everyone watched the reunion unfold. Commander Velen, who had witnessed countless battles and strange occurrences in his life, found himself speechless. The man finally spoke, his voice soft but firm. "This is Seth," he said. "He's not a monster. He's my companion, my pet, and he's been waiting for me." The realization hit everyone like a wave. The creature wasn't a weapon. It wasn't an invader. It was a loyal companion, one that had been searching for its human, its master, for years. The creature, once feared and misunderstood, was simply trying to reunite with the one person it cared about. As Dr. Rilla looked at the man and the creature, she knew this was only the beginning. They had discovered something far greater than they could have ever imagined. And now, they had to figure out what to do next. The reunion between the man and the creature, Seth, left the room in stunned silence. Dr. Rilla could hardly believe what she had just heard. The creature that had been causing so much fear and confusion was not an invader or a monster at all. It was a pet, a companion. The man, still weak from his injuries, sat back down on the medical bed, his eyes never leaving Seth. The creature remained close, its large form standing protectively beside him. "Who are you?" Commander Velen asked, his voice quiet but filled with curiosity. He had seen many things in his military career, but never anything like this. The man took a deep breath, clearly exhausted but determined to explain. "My name is Cal. I'm not from here," he said slowly, his voice hoarse. He looked at the creature affectionately. "Seth and we've been through a lot together. He's not just a pet. He's everything to me." Dr. Rilla, still trying to understand, asked, "Where are you from, Cal? How did you end up here, on Rosar? And what happened to your ship?" Cal winced slightly, but then his eyes hardened, as though the memories were still fresh in his mind. "I come from a far-off world, a place you wouldn't recognize. My people, we've always been explorers. Seth, he was always with me, from the day I found him. He's not like anything else in the galaxy. He's special." Seth's glowing eyes softened as Cal spoke. The creature seemed to understand every word, even if it couldn't speak itself. Dr. Rilla could hardly comprehend the bond between them. The creature was so large and powerful, yet it followed Cal's every movement like a loyal dog. "But what happened to your ship?" Commander Velen pressed. "And why did it crash here? How did you survive?" Cal's expression turned dark, and he clenched his fists. "We were attacked. My ship was hit by something we didn't see coming. We didn't have time to react. The blast knocked out the engines, and we went down. I was the only one who survived, but not without injury. He touched his head, where a large scar ran across his scalp, the only visible mark from the crash. I've been stranded on this planet for months, and Seth has been keeping me alive. He's kept me safe. I've been hiding from the people who destroyed my ship, hoping they wouldn't find me. Dr. Rilla's mind raced. Who are they? The ones who attacked you. Kel hesitated for a moment, clearly unsure how much to reveal. They're not from this planet. They're a group of mercenaries, hired to take down my people and steal something we had. We were carrying something valuable, something they wanted. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Commander Velen stepped forward, his expression serious. If these mercenaries are out there, they could be a threat to Rosar. We can't let them get their hands on whatever you were carrying. Cale nodded, his face darkening. That's what I've been trying to avoid. I know they're still out there. They won't stop until they find me. Seth let out a low, rumbling growl, as though sensing the seriousness of the situation. The creature's tail flicked restlessly, and Cale placed a hand on its massive head, calming it. Dr. Rilla thought for a moment, then spoke. We need to know everything you can tell us about these mercenaries. We need to be prepared. If they're after you, then they're after whatever it is you were carrying. We might be able to stop them before they can do any more damage. Cal's eyes narrowed, and he glanced at Seth. I don't know if you'll be able to stop them. They're dangerous, highly trained, and they have resources that you won't be able to match. But I'll tell you everything I know. You have to understand. I didn't come here by choice. I was trying to escape from them. Dr. Rilla and Commander Velen exchanged glances. The stakes were higher than ever. It was no longer just about the creature. It was about Cale and the dangerous people who were hunting him. And they were on Rosar now. We need to make sure that whatever you were carrying stays out of their hands, Dr. Rilla said firmly. It sounds like it could be very dangerous. Cale nodded slowly. It is. I don't know exactly what they wanted with it, but I know it's something they're willing to kill for. My people, my family, guarded it for centuries. It's a power source, something they wanted to use for their own purposes. The room grew quiet as everyone processed the gravity of Cal's words. A power source, something that could change everything. Something that could be used to control entire planets or destroy them. We have to keep it safe, Commander Velen said, determination in his voice. We'll do whatever it takes. Cale looked at Seth once more, a deep sense of gratitude in his eyes. I don't know if you'll be able to stop them, but with Seth by my side, I have hope. He's always been there when I needed him most. And now we need each other more than ever. The bond between Cale and Seth was undeniable. It wasn't just the connection of master and pet. It was something deeper, something stronger. Seth wasn't just protecting Cale out of loyalty. He was protecting him because they were family. Together, they had survived the impossible. But now, they would have to face even greater challenges. The mercenaries would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. And Cale, with Seth at his side, was determined not to let them win. Dr. Rilla took a deep breath, her mind racing with possibilities. We'll make sure they don't find you, Cale. We'll keep you safe. Commander Velen nodded, his expression fierce. We're with you. Together, we'll stop them. The first real plan was taking shape. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The battle for Rosar, and for Cal's survival, was just beginning. The news of Cal's past and the mysterious power source had left everyone on edge. Dr. Rilla and Commander Velen knew that the mercenaries Cal spoke of would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. They had to act quickly. The team began to prepare for what was sure to be an attack, and Cale, though still weak, was ready to fight for his survival. I don't know when they'll come, Cale said as he sat with Dr. Rilla in a quiet room. But they won't stop until they have what they want. I've seen what they're capable of. They have weapons, Technology far beyond what you have here. Dr. Rilla nodded, her mind racing with the possibilities. We have to be ready. They could come at any time. If they want you and whatever it is you're carrying, we need to protect both. Cal's eyes narrowed. I don't know how much longer, Seth. And I can hide. We've been on the run for so long. I need to find a way to fight back. Outside the room, Commander Velen and his soldiers were preparing for battle. They had set up defenses around the city, but they knew it wasn't enough. The mercenaries were likely already on their way, and once they arrived, there was no telling how many people would be caught in the crossfire. We can't let them reach Cale or Seth, Commander Velen said to his team, his voice firm. They've been tracking him for months. We're their last chance. We need to hold them off, no matter what. The tension in the air was thick. As the sun began to set, the team knew that time was running out. The mercenaries could strike at any moment, and they had no idea how powerful or dangerous they might be. Kel's warnings echoed in their minds. These were not ordinary fighters. These were mercenaries with the best technology and the most dangerous weapons. Meanwhile, Cale and Seth had moved into a hidden area, a secret location known only to Cale. Seth stood protectively by his side, his large body still, his glowing eyes scanning the surroundings. It was clear that the creature was on edge, ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. They won't find us here, Cale said, though there was a hint of doubt in his voice. But we don't have much time. Just then, an alarm blared through the city. The sound of rushing feet echoed in the corridors, and soldiers scrambled into position. The mercenaries had arrived. It's time, Dr. Rilla said, her face set in determination. We have to move quickly. Cale, you and Seth need to stay hidden until we know it's safe. Cale nodded, but his jaw tightened. He wasn't about to sit back while others fought for him. He stood up, his body still weak, but his resolve strong. I'm not running. I'm not hiding anymore. Dr. Rilla looked at him, her eyes filled with concern. Cale, you can't do this alone. Seth is strong, but these mercenaries, they're trained for this. We need to work together. Cale turned to Seth, who gave a low, rumbling growl, as if agreeing with Dr. Rilla. I know you're scared, Cale said softly, reaching out to pat the creature's head. But we've been through worse than this. We can do this. At that moment, a loud explosion shook the ground. The blast came from the outskirts of the city, followed by a second, and then a third. The mercenaries were attacking from all directions. It was clear they were here to take Cale, and they weren't holding back. Move out, Commander Velen ordered, and the soldiers rushed to meet the attackers. The battle had begun. Cale and Dr. Rilla watched as the soldiers engaged with the mercenaries. The sound of gunfire and explosions filled the air, and the ground trembled with each blast. Seth, sensing the danger, growled loudly, his large body tense and ready to spring into action. We have to get out there, Cale said, his voice sharp with urgency. They can't do this without me. Dr. Rilla hesitated. It's too dangerous. You're not strong enough. Cale's eyes burned with determination. I've been fighting for my life since the day my ship was destroyed. I'm not about to let these mercenaries destroy everything I fought for. They're not taking me. Without waiting for a response, Cale stood up and moved toward the door. Seth followed him, its massive form moving with surprising grace. The bond between them was undeniable, and Cale knew that with Seth by his side, he stood a chance. The two of them emerged from their hiding place and made their way toward the heart of the battle. As they approached, they saw the mercenaries moving through the streets, advancing toward the city center. They were armed with advanced weapons and were clearly well coordinated. We're not going to let them win, Cale muttered, his eyes locked on the enemy. Seth let out a deafening roar, charging toward the mercenaries. Its massive form tore through the streets, and with each step, the ground shook beneath it. The mercenaries hesitated for a moment, startled by the creature's power, but quickly regained their composure. Kale, though still weak from his injuries, pulled out a weapon of his own. It wasn't much compared to the advanced tech the mercenaries wielded, but it was enough to buy him time. He fired a shot, knocking down one of the mercenaries who had been moving toward him. But even with Seth's strength and Kel's quick thinking, the mercenaries were overwhelming. For every one they took down, more seemed to appear from the shadows. The battle was far from over, and the city of Rosar was in danger. Dr. Rilla watched from a safe distance, her heart pounding. She knew that Kale and Seth couldn't fight this battle alone. She had to find a way to help. But what could she do? The mercenaries were too powerful, and their forces were too great. Then a sudden thought struck her. If they could stop the mercenaries from reaching the center of the city, they could keep Kale and Seth safe. But how? She had to think fast. The atmosphere on Rosar was electric with tension. The uneasy alliance between the human, their unusual pet, and the divided factions of the alien planet was fragile at best. Every conversation carried the weight of mistrust, and each plan was scrutinized for hidden agendas. But just as it seemed the situation would unravel into chaos, the sky turned crimson with the arrival of an unanticipated force. An enormous fleet of black, spike-covered ships loomed on the horizon, blotting out the sun. These were no ordinary vessels. Their design was unmistakable. An intergalactic warlord, Carthos the Reclaimer, had come. Known throughout the galaxy for his brutal conquests and insatiable hunger for advanced technology, Carthos had heard whispers of the mysterious creature on Rosar. He believed it to be an ancient weapon capable of shifting the balance of power in the galaxy, and now he intended to claim it for himself. The first strike was swift and devastating. Orbital bombardments rained down on unprepared cities, leveling structures and sending civilians scrambling for cover. Carthos' army deployed in waves, their ranks composed of towering cyborg warriors and deadly drone swarms. The people of Rosar, already weakened by their internal divisions, were no match for the warlord's forces. The human and their pet, who had been tentatively accepted as allies, now found themselves thrust into a new role: unifiers. They knew that without a united front, Rosar would fall. "We can't keep fighting each other," the human urged in a meeting of the planet's leaders. "Carthos doesn't care about your territories or rivalries. He'll strip this planet bare and leave nothing but ashes." Reluctantly, the factions agreed. The human's pet, sensing the severity of the threat, let out a low, resonant growl that seemed to carry an air of authority. The creature's presence, once a source of fear, now became a rallying point. A plan of defense. The first step was to fortify Rosar's defenses. The human worked tirelessly alongside the planet's engineers, sharing Earth's knowledge of guerrilla tactics and improvised weaponry. Meanwhile, the creature proved to be far more than a mere curiosity. Its intelligence shone as it coordinated efforts, using its keen understanding of the terrain and its immense strength to set traps and ambush points. When the warlord's forces reached the first line of defense, they were met with fierce resistance. The combined might of Rosar's factions, bolstered by the human's strategic input, caught Carthos' forces off guard. The creature, acting as both a leader and a fighter, charged into the fray with a ferocity that turned the tide in several key skirmishes. One such battle took place in the Crystal Canyons, a natural maze of jagged formations and narrow passages. The human and their pet led a team to set explosives in the canyon walls, luring Carthos' forces into a trap. When the charges detonated, entire sections of the enemy army were buried beneath tons of rock. Despite these victories, it was clear the warlord's forces were too vast to be defeated in a war of attrition. They needed a decisive strike. The creature's revelation. During a moment of calm, the creature revealed an ability no one had anticipated. It could interface with the remnants of ancient technology buried deep within Rosar's crust. These machines, relics of a long-lost civilization, had once powered an incredible planetary defense system. However, they had lain dormant for centuries, their secrets locked away. The human and the planet's top scientists worked feverishly to reactivate the system. The creature acted as a bridge, connecting its unique biology to the alien machines. Its glowing eyes flickered as it tapped into the ancient network, unlocking knowledge that had been lost to time. As the defense system roared to life, the skies above Rosar lit up with energy beams that sliced through Carthos's fleet. Ground forces were routed by automated turrets and energy shields that sprang into place, protecting key strongholds. A moment of sacrifice, but Carthos was not so easily defeated. The warlord himself descended onto the battlefield in a colossal exosuit bristling with weapons. He made his way toward the creature, determined to claim it for his own. The final confrontation took place in the ruins of an ancient city. The human, their pet, and a small band of allies faced off against the towering warlord. Despite their bravery, Carthos's strength was overwhelming. It was the creature who turned the tide. Realizing the danger to its newfound family, the creature unleashed a hidden power, a massive burst of energy that incapacitated Carthos and his suit. The warlord was captured, but the effort left the creature weakened. As the dust settled, the people of Rosar gathered around the creature, no longer seeing it as a threat, but as a savior. The human knelt beside their pet, offering a silent promise of protection and gratitude. Unity in adversity. The defeat of Carthos was a turning point for Rosar. The factions, inspired by their shared struggle, began to rebuild together. The human and their pet became symbols of unity, proving that even in the face of overwhelming odds, cooperation could triumph over division. And though the creature's origins remained a mystery, one thing was clear. It had chosen to stand with humanity and Rosar, not as a weapon, but as a guardian. The battlefield stretched before them, littered with remnants of fallen machines and wounded soldiers. Carthos's forces, though formidable, were faltering under the combined might of Rosar's newly united factions and the reactivated ancient defense systems. Yet, the warlord himself remained a looming threat, his colossal exosuit gleaming with weapons and impenetrable armor. The human and their pet stood at the center of it all. Though battered and bruised, their resolve burned brighter than ever. The bond they shared, forged in trust and mutual respect, had become the key to their survival, and Rosar's last hope. As Carthos advanced, the creature turned to its human, its glowing eyes locking onto theirs. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Without words, an understanding passed between them. They had come this far together, and they would finish this together. A plan against the impossible. Carthos unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, forcing the pair to take cover. The warlord's voice boomed across the battlefield, filled with disdain. "You think a primitive creature and its pet human can stand against me? I am Carthos, the Reclaimer. I take what I want, and I destroy what I cannot have." The human smirked, adrenaline fueling their confidence. "Funny, that's exactly why you're going to lose. You underestimate what you don't understand." Using their agility and ingenuity, the human and their pet darted between cover, drawing Carthos's fire while setting up a plan. The creature, with its newfound ability to interface with Rosar's ancient technology, began activating dormant systems hidden beneath the battlefield. Energy pulses flickered through the ground as old machinery came to life, creating a grid of traps and countermeasures. Carthos charged forward, his exosuit smashing through debris and unleashing chaos. But with each step, he fell deeper into the creature's carefully laid trap. As the ancient systems powered up, energy beams surged toward him, disabling key components of his armor. The creature's true potential. When Carthos was finally immobilized, the creature stepped forward. Its body seemed to glow with an ethereal energy, as if it were channeling the very life force of Rosar itself. It let out a deafening roar, a sound that was both a warning and a declaration. The warlord sneered, even as his suit sparked and sputtered. "You're just a beast, a tool. You can't defeat me." But the creature wasn't just a beast. It had learned, adapted, and evolved. It combined its immense strength with the intelligence it had gained from its bond with the human. With a swift, calculated move, it disabled the exosuit entirely, tearing away Carthos's weapons and rendering him powerless. The human approached cautiously, standing beside their pet. They looked up at the defeated warlord, their voice steady. "You've lost, Carthos. Not just because of us, but because you underestimated what a true partnership can achieve." Carthos glared at them, but he had no retort. The battle was over. A hero's welcome. With Carthos defeated, his army scattered, retreating into the void of space. The people of Rosar emerged from their shelters and strongholds, their faces a mix of awe and gratitude. They had not just witnessed the defeat of a tyrant, they had seen the power of unity and the unbreakable bond between the human and their pet. As the human and the creature returned to the city, they were met with cheers and reverence. The leaders of Rosar, who had once been divided by fear and mistrust, now stood united. One of them stepped forward, speaking on behalf of the planet. "You have shown us what it means to stand together, even in the face of impossible odds. Your bond with this creature has taught us that strength lies not in dominance, but in understanding and cooperation." The human nodded, their hand resting on their pet's shoulder. "This wasn't just our fight. It was all of us. And this creature isn't just my companion. It's proof that we're stronger together than apart." A new beginning. The military, which had once sought to control or destroy the creature, now saw it in a new light. It wasn't a weapon to be feared, but a guardian to be respected. They'd formally rescinded their claims, acknowledging the creature's autonomy and the unique bond it shared with its human partner. As peace returned to Rosar, the human and their pet were offered a place to stay, should they choose. The people wanted them to be a part of their world, a living reminder of what they had overcome together. The human looked out at the horizon, their pet at their side. "What do you think?" they asked softly. The creature rumbled in response, its tone one of contentment and approval. They decided to stay, at least for a time. Together, they would help Rosar rebuild, forging a new future not just for the planet, but for the bond between humanity and the unknown. Though the universe might never fully understand the connection between the human and their pet, it was undeniable. Their bond had become a legend, a story of resilience, intelligence, and heart that would echo across the stars.